Manx Radio.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Master Mike, good afternoon. Well, welcome to Mannin Line this Monday lunchtime from the Isle of Man. Your chance to have your say today because it's an open line between now and 1 o'clock. Call 66 13 68, text or WhatsApp 166 177. Email studio@manxradio.com. So whatever's on your mind, you heard the story about the sidecars, which may be, well, some sidecar competitors are confident that the sidecars will return to TT in 2027. The impact of climate change on the Isle of Man, protecting our farmers from the impact of climate change. The DEFA Minister says recent conditions aren't favourable for Manx crops. Well, that being said, of course, we only 6% of what we eat actually comes from the Isle of Man, so we're protecting that 6%, I guess, and certainly no milling wheat anyway. But any thoughts on that? And dogs will be allowed on Douglas Beach year-round as part of a council trial. Anyway, what else is on your mind? Call, text, email, WhatsApp. I've got to say congratulations to Matt Bostock, Commonwealth Games gold medalist in the points race. Our first gold medal since 2006 it was. Congratulations to him. Right, let's get to the lines. Peter's first with us today. Hello, Peter.
Oh, hello, Andy. It's Peter Melcott here. I'm not picking up on any of the issues that you've mentioned, but I would like to pick up on the question of impartiality. You know that I've rung in a couple of times with regard to the question of the windmills, you know, and the fact that those who eventually adjudicated this must not have taken a position on it.
Yeah.
I think that principle could well be transferred as well to the Tynwald Standards Committee. As you know, there was recently a complaint by one MHK about another MHK, and the Standards Committee looked at it, and then they had a very long debate at the last Tynwald. Now, the thing that crosses my mind is this. The people in Tynwald, you cannot abstain. You've got to vote one way or the other. It inevitably means then that if the Standards Committee is made up of members of Tynwald, they're going to be voting, some of them are going to be voting on a report that they've actually drawn up, and then in that sense you're ending up marking your own homework. And so I don't see how it's possible to maintain this question about impartiality on the wider sense if you're not going to apply it to other areas. And I remember some years ago, it first came to my attention when there was another complaint about a certain MHK. And I remember being in the chamber at the time when it came up. And I remember thinking to myself, wait a minute, some of the people who are going to vote on this are those who've drawn up the report, which is before Tynwald. And this cannot be right, because they've already, by making recommendations and having heard all the evidence and pros and cons, they've already taken a position. And so I think that there's a reform needed here if they're going to maintain consistency with the argument that's being made about the windmills.
So, I mean, surely, do you think they're aware of this sort of incongruency?
No, I don't think they are. I don't think it's occurred to them. It's occurred to me, and it may well have occurred to other people, but it is, as you say, incongruous that if you've got the principle, and this has been pushed very hard, as you know, with regard to people standing for the House of Keys, I do think that principle then has got to apply right across the board, and I would suggest that an early reform that needs to be made is that in the future, where complaints are made by one MHK about another MHK, that the complaint is dealt with by some independent, impartial body who will make a report, and then they will be free to vote upon it because they won't have been involved in any sense, shape or form in the report. I would have thought also that there's another problem here, that the person who's made the complaint and against whom it's been made really shouldn't be voting on it, because they're obviously going to have I mean, if someone makes a complaint, they've already got an interest in the matter, and if you're having a complaint against you, you've already got an interest in the matter. That could be solved by altering the voting system, which I've thought for some time is necessary to change, whereby a member can abstain, but that can't be done at the moment. You've got to go one way or the other.
Well, so what do you what would you advise is the future course of action?
Yeah, what I've said, that you need an independent body, persons who are appointed, just the same as I think in the broadcasting system, you've got an independent body. If somebody makes a complaint about a broadcaster, I'd rather have it at the back of my mind that there is an independent body to whom the thing could ultimately go and would then make a recommendation or a report on it. So obviously they've got the only thing to decide is who or where would that independent body appropriately be.
Is there a Tynwald ombudsman?
I'm not entirely sure about that.
Me neither, to be quite honest.
I can't answer that one. I have it at the back of the mind that there might be. If there is, then that might be the answer. But anyway, I leave that on the table because we had a lot of discussion on this whole question of impartiality, and I do think that as it's come up again, I think it's now time for it to be considered, especially it's being pushed very hard with regard to the question of a planning application. The second thing that is a matter of concern to me, and has been for years, and I've got absolutely nowhere for anyone to take it up, and that is on the question of criminal penalties. There's, it's certainly in Britain, there's a lot of discussion about the overcrowding of prisons. I believe in the Isle of Man that also there have been signs of that could happen. One reform that's been needed for some years, and this would be very extensive in the question of time and effort, is to have a look at all the legislation we've got, some of which, to my mind, and I've thought this for years, puts in criminal penalties, almost pops them in as a matter of course, without really considering, does this particular offence merit prison? I mean, I have it in the back of my mind, I may or may not be right, that, for example, when they had the question about smoking, I think one of the penalties, as well as being fines, was in prison. And I personally, if I'd have been in the House, I would have voted against that, because I do not see that is something which you could put. Prison should be a very last resort. And several years ago, or about 10 years ago, I drew up for one of the Tynwald Select Committees a 7-point plan of how you would take a decision before you actually reach out for putting prison as the penalty. There'd be 7 questions that you would ask yourself. That's never been taken up. And looking at some of the things, it was the same with the Safe Access Zones Bill. I seem to recall that had criminal penalties, and we had discussion on that when it was going through. And certainly some of the things that were in there couldn't remotely qualify as being prison. For example, for influencing someone or advising someone, it isn't even criminal in sound, let alone for a penalty. So I think for the new House of Keys, I think that is an area that they need to look at as a long-term solution to a problem that's happened in Britain, whereby I would suspect in Britain you've got far too many statutes which actually bring prison in, and that really devalues the whole purpose. It really takes away the whole point of prison as being a last resort.
Do you recall any or all of the 7 questions, Peter?
Oh, dear me. I think that the first question you'd always have to ask is, is the matter in question something which there is very complete evidence that actually really needs the intervention of law at all? I mean, could it be solved by, for example, having a code of practice? You then need to look at things that, is this a widespread social problem? Has the existing law been shown to be inadequate to deal with it? If so, in what way? And then you would start and look at, and this isn't all the 7 points that I made, you'd start and look at, for example, what are you trying to achieve by sending to prison? I mean, are there other penalties, usually fines, that would be perfectly adequate in the case? In other words, how do you view prison? You've got to ask yourself a very fundamental question. What sort of offences do you think merit prison? What are you trying to achieve by it? Are they people, for example, who are a danger to society in one form or another? And if they are not, are there other ways of dealing with it? And I think the whole aim should always be to make prison a last resort. Because, after all, once you've had prison, there isn't anything more that you can do. We haven't got the death penalty or anything like that. And it's rather like in the 18th century. In the 18th century, between 1750 and 1800, willy-nilly, Parliament kept on putting the death penalty into offences. And so you got to the year 1800, and you'd actually got 200 offences that carried the death penalty. And what happened then was that juries just simply were stopping convicting people because they felt, obviously, that whatever the criminal conduct was, it did not merit being put to death. And they started finding that some penalties, some crimes that were being prosecuted, it was falling apart because the juries weren't convicting. Right. Or if they were convicting, they were using some strange legal fictions. For example, in those days, when you had, it was death for stealing something over a certain figure of money. And it originally was just £1. If you stole something worth more than £1, it was death. And the jury, it was what was called in those days grand larceny, and if it was less than £1, it was called petty larceny. And the jury had to value the goods to decide whether the cut-off point had been received. And you got to the absurd situation once in 1808 with a case called R versus McAllister, where someone had stolen a £10 note, and at that time £2 was the cut-off point. What the jury then had to do was to value the goods, and they valued the goods that were stolen at £1.19. And you couldn't argue against it because the jury was sovereign. Well, I think they got the message when it was getting like that. We had exactly the same problem with the Official Secrets Act in the 20th century. There was a case that was considered for coming before the courts, and they didn't because juries were starting to acquit people where they were being charged with offences which were really not for which the Act was originally designed, and juries were simply acquitting them, and they had to reform the Act. And I think on this whole question of criminal law, I've slightly strayed from the question of prison, but on this whole question, you do get, if you don't think through what you're trying to achieve when you're creating criminal statutes, you will eventually find that the law will become quite difficult to be able to enforce.
Okay.
Big subject there, but I do think they need to look at it.
Okay, and I apologise for putting you on the spot over the 7 questions.
No, that's all right.
Okay.
If you want me to, I can always dig out what I've sent. I can informally just drop one in at Manx Radio and let you see the sort of letters I've been writing, just for your own personal information. But thanks for your time.
I'd appreciate that. Thanks, Peter. Good to hear from you.
Thank you.
All
Bye-bye.
right, 21 minutes past 12. Let's go to Robert, who's with us now. Hi, Robert.
Hi, how you doing? My thoughts were, I was talking to Laurie Hooper, and he said that, we were talking about solar panels and things like that. I was just trying to get the mood music of what the finance of the situation at the moment, whereby there seemed to be a bit of a Bitcoin craze for a while, and people had invested or not invested, as the case may be, enough. And there seems to be a Bitcoin regret at the moment that they could have invested more and thereby, fix solar panels to the house and things like that. And I think that that's the sticking point of where we're at.
Are you a Bitcoin millionaire, Robert?
Oh well, I couldn't possibly comment.
All right. Well, we'll leave that there. Robert, it's good to hear from you. Thanks for being with us.
All right, thanks. Bye.
22 minutes past 12. If any Bitcoin millionaires are listening now, could you tell us when and where and how you do it? And is it just going to blow up and go? Who knows? Any thoughts, by the way? Text, email, call, WhatsApp. Julian's on now. Hi, Julian.
Hi, Andy. How's it going?
Well, very well. What about your weekend? Did you have a good weekend?
Yeah, it was nice, actually. I like these temperatures. It's 20 degrees. It's just nice to get out and do stuff, isn't it? And you've still got those long evenings, so you can enjoy the weather and all the rest of it. So it's pretty good, really. Let's hope it lasts. Just noticing in the local news about the DEFRA Minister, Claire Barber, stating that protecting farmers from the impact of climate change is a no-brainer. I think she's also the chair still of the Climate Change Transformation Board. This whole thing with net zero has become quite a big topic now, hasn't it? With the 87 Eiffel Tower wind turbines and all the rest of it. I'm finding it interesting. There is a bombshell analysis all about CO2, how long it remains in the atmosphere, the human contribution, and it has completely discredited the IPCC's modelled assumptions that CO2 emissions from humans contribute significantly to CO2 levels, and that CO2 lasts tens to hundreds of thousands of years in the atmosphere. This paper is only relying on empirical evidence measured. The time that it remains in the atmosphere is 3.8 years, not hundreds of thousands. This research also looks at the unique signature. I'm sorry to get a little technical here, but please hang with me. The unique signature of carbon 12, 13, and 14. You might remember that carbon 14 is used for dating, like old bits of metal that we find from the Bronze Age and things. And this shows that the increase in CO2 in the atmosphere is almost entirely, if not all of it, from natural sources like the oceans, land, and plants. And that source hasn't changed for 500 years. This paper completely exonerates humanity, and it also highlights that net zero is completely unnecessary.
Who's put the paper together, Julian? Who's writing it?
Right, this is Jonathan Kohler, a physicist, and Willie Soon, who's an astrophysicist. They're accompanied by Dimitris Koutsianis, who's another expert in this field. They have got their paper, which is definitely worth looking at. It's a little bit of a long title, but you'll kind of get it from the title, how it's written. The title of the paper is Dominance of Natural Atmospheric CO2 Dynamics, Falsification of Anthropogenic Attribution through Mass Balance Analysis, Isotopic Diagnostics and Thermodynamic First Principles. So from that title, you can kind of guess where they're going with this. So the extra CO2 concentration, where's it going? Well, we always talk about the word biosphere. Well, the biosphere is expanding. You can clearly see this from the 15% increase in greenery around the Sahara Desert. So the Sahara Desert is effectively shrinking, and that's because plants do well in dry conditions when there's more CO2 concentration in the air. So this paper is showing a very clear link based on, actually, one of the almost accidental things that it showed was the nuclear tests back in the 1950s. And there was a very sharp spike of that carbon-14 that I mentioned earlier. And they've been measuring ever since how much that is going back into the carbon cycle. And it's a handful of years. So this whole IPCC thing, which is actually based on a scientist called Archer. And when you actually go and look at his suppositions, which is for the core IPCC reasoning for all of their net zero bits, it's all based on models talking to models and getting into some kind of crazy feedback. There are no mathematical formulae. There are no figures. It's all supposition, and it's all conjecture, and it's all theoretical.
Okay.
So this new paper is an absolute bombshell.
If anybody wants to find this paper, how do they do it?
Yeah, if you just go on any search, I mean, people say, Dr. Google. Google's like a telephone directory. You can go. I mean, if I'm looking up the Isle of Man government and I find a document there, it'll take me to it. Unless, of course, the Isle of Man government document is supposedly strange or something because I've Googled it. However, if you just look for dominance of natural atmospheric CO2 dynamics, that should take you to the Kohler. His surname is Cohler, and Willie Soon, as in Soon, Soon. So just to wind up on that, the paper completely destroys the need for net zero, wind turbines, huge solar installations, and importantly, all the carbon taxes and levies that have been loaded onto the price of our electricity, the gas that we're using for heating, oil for all our cars, and the coal that we use. It's all rubbish because there is no detectable carbon signature for the burning of hydrocarbons. That carbon signature clearly shows it's from natural sources, and it's altered or modulated by the sun. The IPCC is all based on models and theory and conjecture. Okay.
So it's 20 years, Julian. It's 20 years ago, 2006, Al Gore's book An Inconvenient Truth came out, and of course there have been lots of films about it. There was a film about it, and he was basically saying that we're going to have to change the way we live our lives. Over the last 20 years, it doesn't sound like you've been convinced by Al Gore.
No, I haven't. And it was interesting when you look at the timing of all this. He has got an investment management company called Generation Investment Management. That's the name of the company. So that was all formed around the time when he was running for president, around 2000. At the same time, he was lobbying Congress for green initiatives. So you've got it kind of looks a bit like insider trading there. Now, when he ran for president, he was worth around $1 million. He's now worth north of $400 million, and it's all coming from this. So if you've got a paper that is now clearly showing that this carbon 12-13 ratio signature is clearly showing that the CO2 that's going into the atmosphere and increasing, which it has been doing for 500 years, is clearly nothing to do with us burning fossil fuels. This paper is going to knock the foundations out of this whole net zero, the whole thing. There's no need for wind farms. There's no need for any of it. This paper is going to be a significant knockout for the foundations of net zero, I'll tell you.
Okay, all right.
Anyway, thanks, Andy.
Good to hear from you. Thanks for your opinion today, Julian. Good to hear from you. If you want to counter anything, of course, you can always call 66 13 68. Text or WhatsApp on 166 177. Email studio@manxradio.com. Everybody gets the same kick at it. Everybody gets the same run at the Telephones, if you like. If you want to have a say, then have a say.
Simply income protection from Kestrel Insurance. A choice of benefits. Simple underwriting and peace of mind with a regular income for up to 2 years if you're unable to work due to illness or injury. Kestrel Insurance is registered with the Isle of Man Financial Services Authority.
Jeffrey, that suit looks terrible. The sleeves are far too long and it doesn't button up in the middle. You need made to measure.
Made to measure? See if I could afford that.
You didn't complain when Spectrum made all our bespoke windows.
That was different. At Spectrum, you get a bespoke service at an off-the-shelf price, whether you choose quality PVC or aluminium.
Visit Spectrum Windows, the showroom, Derby Road, Ramsey, or call 817777.
Kids, pets, messy partners. Your furniture goes through a lot, so it's time to freshen things up. Sofas, beds, tables and more. Ace Home and Ace Carpets are full of Ace ideas. Open Monday to Saturday, Middle River Industrial Estate, Douglas. Find us on Facebook.
Your place is so much better with Ace.
Carry on up Prospect Hill.
Wake up, Maxie's, I think I got something to say now, please.
Let us entertain you with local performers delivering some very famous songs, but with the lyrics tweaked to cover the ups and downs of the election of members of the House of Keys. Laugh, join in, and of course dig deep into your pockets to support 4 good Manx charities: Hospice Isle of Man, Forget Me Not, Nassim's Manx Brain Tumour Charity, and Manx National Heritage. Join us at the Gaiety Theatre on the 3rd and 4th of September. This advert is sponsored by Manx Radio.
This Tuesday here on Manx Radio at 6:30, join Kiri Kermode and myself, Simon Clark, for Countryside.
Well, heavy horses help shape the Isle of Man and its heritage. I catch up with the Isle of Man Heavy Horse Society ahead of the Royal Manx Show.
I found out more about Horizon EMS, a new medical service that's available for outdoor events, and also Ian Crebban, who was showing me round the ferrets at the Southern Show. Plus, I went along to see what was happening at the big polo event in Ballath that was happening at the weekend.
That's all in Countryside Tuesday here on Manx Radio at 6:30, and don't forget you can download or subscribe to the podcast for free at manxradio.com.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
It's 28 minutes now before what? Ken's with us now. Hi, Ken.
Afternoon. I don't quite fully understand about the windmills and the gagging order from a British Attorney General, basically.
No, he's our Attorney General.
I know, but he's British though, isn't he? He's been paid by... Right. But is he not paid by...
No, he's our Attorney General. I mean, Walter Wannenberg's our Attorney General.
Yes. But how far does the gagging order go? Because as far as I know, Manx Radio's not asked any of the prospective candidates for election about the windmills.
Well, I think things have been mentioned, but I mean, it's not a gagging order. What he's saying is, if you give an opinion, it means that when it comes to the decision taking within Tynwald, if you can't be on the if you like the panel that makes the final decision because you've already given an opinion. So by definition, you can't be unbiased. You can't not have an opinion because you've already given your opinion. He's not saying don't give an opinion. He's saying if you do, there'll be consequences.
So if everybody gives an opinion, there won't be anybody available.
Well, there is that. No, you're quite right. There is that.
So who's controlling that? And what are there no penalties? Is that the only penalty? You won't be able to vote. You won't be able to be on a committee that recommends yay or nay.
That's the situation, yeah.
And it's a bit like the Standing Orders Committee. If it was I don't know how many, 3 on it. If it was a 2-1 vote, say, does it the person that voted opposite? They have to vote the same way, constitutionally in government, collective government. Is that the way of that?
Don't think it's exactly the same, but I mean that's what he said. If you give an opinion, there may be consequences. If you're called to be in the Council of Ministers, you'll have to recuse yourself. You'll have to sit it out because you've already given an opinion. So lots of candidates will sit on the fence because they may fancy themselves in the Council of Ministers. Right, Ken, good to hear from you. Thanks for that. Going back to the Chief Constable, says Texter 490, and Chief Constable's comments on driving standards last week. He's 100% right. Indeed, on everything he said. But we need to catch these people who are speeding. For example, over the weekend, there were about 6 motorbikes at very high speed. Racing as they're all bunched up and no gap as the highway code recommend. You could hear them coming from the other side of the village, as you can during TT and MGP. They did at least 2 laps. Surely that was noticeable by the police somewhere around the Isle of Man, and no, we didn't report it, as we will be reporting things on an hourly basis. Is it bad publicity for the Isle of Man to stop people driving dangerously? I'd just be interested to know which village that is. And John said offshore and onshore wind farms will slightly be detrimental to the birds, but at the pace that we're going, the devastation caused by climate change will strip the entire planet of wildlife. Well, the only point I'll just make, John, is that Britain, the whole of Britain, contributes slightly above 1% to the world's carbon footprint, if you like. We, as an island, contribute a tiny fraction of above 1%. So no matter what we do, and bearing in mind we don't really create that much of a carbon footprint, and there's an awful lot of green on the Isle of Man. So whatever we do, I mean, are we going to make any difference whatsoever? Bearing in mind that China and India burn about 2/3 of the world's coal and show no sign of stopping it. So, I mean, it's very nice that we can stand up and say, look what we're doing, but if it's costing us money, is it worth it? I pose the question. What do you think? I had to use the new Liverpool terminal to return to the Isle of Man, says Tim, after a procedure. It was a lung biopsy and I couldn't fly. I'm a little doddery on my feet and can't walk too far. There was not one wheelchair in the entire building at the Liverpool terminal. I'm new to the world of disability and found it very bizarre. Just to add, the airport's brilliant, by the way. Talking about the prison, all non-Manx born need to be escorted off the island and banned for a timely period that suited the crime committed. Well, that's the point 382. At the moment, they're serving their time on the Isle of Man. Presumably, when they've served their time, they'll then be removed from the Isle of Man. And as to whether, and remember, the British prisons are very full, so whether or not we could do a swap and send them across there, we don't know, or whether it's practical. But anyway, I think all the people who do have exclusion orders will be sent at the end of their sentence. They'll be escorted off the Isle of Man. Julian is right, says Steve, that climate change is a big topic because it's real, it's here, and it's having a real impact on lives right now. And still to try to deny it at this stage in the light of overwhelming evidence is ridiculous. This is Steve's point of view. But of course, let's have a look here. Oh, Steve thinks we're ignoring his point of view. Steve, we just read your point of view. But anyway, you can always pick a phone up, Steve. You can always pick a phone up, Steve. If you really want to get your point of view across, there is a phone line. It gets straight through here. Say what you want. And Bonzo with us. Hi, Bonzo.
Hello there.
And here's somebody who has picked up the phone.
Yeah. I'll come to Julian's comments in a minute, but just about a couple of things which were mentioned just now. The stipulation on discussing Alstead by politicians and potential politicians, the advice given by Walter Wannenberg was may. Yes? And this is where the legislative hands go, aha, because may is not must. And so there is the possibility, but it is not stipulated that people will not get a say, if they actually start talking about it.
Right.
So what I would recommend candidates to do is that all of them talk about it. Because that way there won't be anybody left, and the AG will simply have to alter the advice.
Right. So if everybody evinces an opinion, that will negate the advice, you're saying?
Well, yes, because if there's nobody there who can actually decide on things because they've been compromised by that as a view of the AG, what's going to happen? It's ludicrous. Note that the statement is only, it may preclude, not will. Yeah?
Right, okay. Anyway, on to Julian.
So as I say, if you did that, the AG, I'm afraid, wouldn't have much of a leg to stand on. So bear that in mind, candidates.
Okay.
Also, with what you were saying about emissions and China, etc., and that UK only has 1%. Yes, one of the reasons why UK only has 1% is because it exported much of those emissions in manufacturing to China and India.
Yeah.
As did quite a few European countries. So, and this is something that China does and India do raise at various climate conferences and such. Oh, well, you blame us for these emissions. Hey, just a minute. You gave them to us. You asked us to take them. We're only kind of fulfilling what globalist capitalism said. So to blame us for the emissions is not exactly good. And as for the Chinese are doing everything they can actually to go away from coal into renewables and electric cars. Electric cars, you can hardly buy a internal combustion engine car nowadays in China. The only reason they're using coal, they have such a huge demand now for air conditioning because of the fact of global warming.
Well, the thing is that China's got all sorts of issues coming its way. Obviously, it used to be a very poor country. Now it's on its way to becoming developed, and there are still vast regions of China that are underdeveloped. They've got a kind of demographic time bomb coming their way with the one-child problem or the one-child policy that they had. So, I mean, good luck on them. Anybody who's poor, I applaud anybody who is poor and who wants to become rich. The trouble is that it kind of obfuscates everything. We don't quite know who's what to whom and where regarding climate change. So are we responsible for it, or are we not? Are we responsible because we buy stuff from people who make it cheap? Is that really our fault?
Well, yeah. I mean, look at landfill, for example, and the inability to reuse things just because it makes more money and more sense to have something that you can use for a bit and then it breaks and you can't repair it, so you chuck it in landfill. Or you have some clothes or stuff which are cheap enough to go, oh right, yeah, well, I don't want to wear that anymore. 6 weeks later, and then you chuck it in the bin, and it goes into landfill or something. So it does encourage, capitalism is, of course, about encouraging waste, because if you start selling things to people that last, you're not going to stay in business very long. Really. But going on to Julian and his various denialist, Lord knows where he gets it from. And this just comes day after day after day after day after day on here and on social media. And this drip, 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 drip of misinformation is one of the reasons why we still don't have any action on climate 6-7 years later after declaring a climate emergency. Just this continual denial and people having to essentially prove time and time again that the world actually is round and that science does exist. Emily Maitlis, who used to present Newsnight on BBC, described the problems she had with the Brexit discussions before the Brexit vote. And she was told by and find us 20 economists to talk about Brexit. And she could find 19 economists who were against Brexit and one who was for. So she had to have one who was for it and one who was against it. the idea that the opposing opinion, I won't bless it with the term argument, the opposing opinion, no matter how ill-considered, no matter how ludicrous, no matter how, must be given absolute equality with vast quantities of science, vast quantities of reason, and the evidence, indeed, even of your own eyes.
Okay. All right. We're going to go because your phone's dipping in and out here at the moment, Bonzo, but we get the gist.
Oh, is it? Oh, sorry.
But thanks for calling today. Good to hear from you. It's 1:45 now.
Concerned about your hearing? Get the support you need with an expert hearing assessment at Island Hearing in Port Erin. Assessments are free for over 65s, and microsuction wax removal is also available at our Port Erin clinic. With more than 17 years as your local hearing care specialist, Island Hearing offers friendly professional help and advice. Call 830 722 or visit Island Hearing at 1 Station Road, Port Erin.
Oh, not again.
Oh, that Jack from next door really needs to improve his left foot.
Oh, don't worry. A storm did the damage last time, and it was easy to get a greenhouse pane from Manx Glass and Glazing.
Manx Glass and Glazing don't just do the big jobs. Visit them on Snugborough Trading Estate for all your glazing repairs and supplies. From glass tabletops and picture frame glass to greenhouse glazing, along with good old-fashioned customer service and product knowledge.
Manx Glass and Glazing. You're smashing.
Visit Ramsey Art Gallery for a fabulous range of top brand watches and stunning gold and silver jewellery, gifts for all occasions, and of course our gallery of prints and original artworks. Find all this and more at Ramsey Art Gallery, Jewellers and Engravers, opposite the RNLI shop.
If you have children, pets or a house, talk to Peace of Mind about a will or power of attorney, which will help family members when it matters. Prices from $199 plus VAT. Find us on Facebook or call 632 610.
The countdown to the next Isle of Man general election is officially on. On Thursday, the 24th of September, you'll get to have your say on who you think should represent you in the House of Keys. And here at Manx Radio, we've got all the information you need to help you make your choice. We'll be playing out our full interviews with all the candidates each weekday from just before 11:30, and they'll also be available as podcasts shortly after broadcast, and you can watch them on our YouTube channel. And don't forget, for everything you need to know about the upcoming election, you can head to our dedicated website. Just go to manxradio.com to find out more.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Sue dropped me a note to say, "Hi Andy, my husband's just been across and back home on the Ben My Chree while she's standing in for the Manxman. There wasn't enough seating. It was hot and crowded, and in comparison to how she was before the Manxman came into service, she's in an unacceptable state for the amount of people. My husband said that the normal areas were full of people sitting on foldable seats and cool boxes. But there are areas where there's the charge of £28 and they weren't full. My husband, says Sue, said that the steam packet should stop the charges in these areas until the ferry situation settles down and the number of people reduces. Removing the charge and the areas for the services included with the charges for these areas would open up more seating, or is that too much like common sense?" Here's Mark now. Hello, Mark.
Good afternoon, Andy. Yes, just a few things. First thing, can I just thank Julian and Ewan for the information they put forward. For Bonzo, he may think he's right, but that doesn't mean that Julian and Ewan are wrong. The other matter is cycling through Strand Street. It continues to happen. I know my conversation with Devon Watson on the 8th of July, it was mentioned about cycling. I was walking with a lady who was parallel towards the same distance as me. We could touch our hands out, and we were walking towards the post office, and a cyclist came between us and then decided to do wheelies through Strand Street as far as Boots. You could see him going up. Now, I brought this matter to a person at Douglas Council regarding that no enforcement has been actioned, and their response was, "We are currently
in talks with the community police about how we can tackle the cycling through the street. We do have the bylaws, and the officers have used them on cyclists, which I've never seen. We also do have the powers to write new bylaws, but they still must be passed by Tynwald. He then went on to say that Strand Street, Duke Street and Castle Street, including side streets, are public highways controlled under the Highway Act of 1985, so are enforceable by the police. I know this because they worked for the DOI 25 years. Now, Devon Watson did say on that Wednesday that cycling through Strand Street it belongs to the powers of the council who are in charge of Strand Street, the warden enforcement.
Have you ever seen anybody stopped while cycling in Strand Street? Have you ever seen a bylaw officer or a police officer, anybody stop? All they have to do is stand there for a couple of hours and you'll see people cycling.
No. I've also sent many emails to housing and the wardens, and I sent them the time, the dates of when the cyclists went past me, and I have never seen an enforcement officer in Strand Street, ever.
Okay, all right.
And I've never seen a policeman in Strand Street either. But, Andy, it is getting worse because these cyclists should be really insured, because if they hit anybody, they're then negligent, and if they're on Social Security, you're never going to get anything paid from them because they can't afford it.
Well, the thing is that if we're not catching people who cycle, then the word goes around that you can do whatever you want. So, but if they did stop people, if they did fine people, if they did make it public that it was you shouldn't cycle there, then people would stop it. But if there is a bylaw in place but it's not being enforced, then what's the point of the bylaw?
Yeah, I did also mention about it's £2,500 fine, but I actually asked them to bring that fine down to £80, and if they couldn't pay the £80, then their bike would be confiscated until they pay the £80. They could collect the bike if they pay the fine. If they don't pay the fine, they don't get the bike, and if they do it again, then they have to go to court.
Okay.
Simple as.
All right. Mark's good to hear from you. Thanks for calling today on Mannin Line. We appreciate it. At 8 minutes before 1, a note in from texter 696 who said, why are the boat crew living on the boat? They should have a staff room only when they finish their shifts. They should go home like everybody else. If they live in a far away from Liverpool, they should be refused a job on the boats and give them to people who live closer to the berthing sites. People in England sometimes have to travel 1 or 2 hours each way to get to their jobs, so why are we sacrificing our cabins to house these boat workers? Well, the steam packet has decided that's what they're going to do. Because of the working patterns for the Ben My Chree, they've taken all the passenger cabins away and the crew now use those cabins. The Ben My Chree is truly cabin-free. Well, for passengers anyway. Why should Manx Wildlife Trust incur costs preparing reports to prove and countermand the supposed environmental effects of the island's wildlife as put forward by Orsted, says Ali on the text. And we had a note in last week, or a lady called last week, about the chap who was swimming in the NSC pool with his little camera. And Pete said just because he didn't have steel toe-cap boots, a hard hat and high vis, just mean he wasn't professional. Well, she said he didn't look very professional. And anyway, that was the point. It's not only birds, says Malcolm, that are affected by wind turbines. Sea mammals are also adversely affected. The charity Orca are very concerned about the effect on cetaceans. I'll have a dash cam as long as I'm not paying for it, says Mark on WhatsApp. We were talking about this, and somebody put forward the case that if it was mandatory on the Isle of Man to have a dash cam in your vehicle, that would surely cut out a lot of problems with driving offences and also with accidents if it were mandatory. And Mark says, as long as I'm not paying for it. Well, I don't know. I mean, you can get dash cams quite cheap, can't you? Or maybe you could get that off your insurance premium. But if you had a dash cam, do you think it would help? Would you drive better if you know that somebody was watching? I've been banging on about road traffic collisions across the Isle of Man. All they need is a proper policing unit that can sit there and go round and stop vehicles for speeding tickets. Give out advice, put cars under scrutiny for defects and go there. It's been crying out. You don't need cameras, you need a traffic to behave themselves and do that. Bylaw officers in Douglas apparently do stop cyclists and challenge them, a caller has said. Well, challenging cyclists is one thing. Have they ever been nicked? Has anybody ever been nicked for riding bicycles up and down and sometimes recklessly along Strand Street, certainly along Duke Street and along Castle Street as well? Have you ever seen anybody nicked for riding a bike up and down Strand Street? Dozens of people do it every day. You only need to be in Strand Street for more than 10-15 minutes and there'll be somebody whizzing up and down. This coming Friday we're going to be at the Royal Manx Agricultural Show with a panel of guests chatting about all things agricultural and with the countryside. We'll be with the creamery boss, the new creamery MD, Stephen Keeley. Bill Dale will be there from Beach Buddies, Murray Kringle from the Manx National Farmers Union. We did hope Ned Kennish will be with us, but he's not at the show this year. But hopefully James Allinson, you know the Allinson potatoes, and Sam Morrie, the farmer, who will be with us. Anyway, we'll be live at the show on Friday. Come up and say hello. That's it. Thanks to Donna on the phones today. Enjoy the rest of your Monday.
WINT